This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so now in today we will start with another scenario. Like here we have, as soon as we drag and drop the source definition from sources folder to the mapping designer, along with the source definition, source qualifier transformation will be created. Along with the source definition, source qualifier transformation will be created. Okay, what we can do by using this source qualifier transformation, that we will discuss. This is our second scenario. So for the second scenario, I have already created a table in my sum with the name emp_sq_s1. Okay, so in the last class I have shown you how to create a table. In the same way, you have to create a table with this name, whatever the naming convention here I have given. With the same name you can give. SQ means source qualifier. Now I am going to use this for to practice the source qualifier transformation properties. Okay, so like this you can create a source table and target table. So only in the last class I have shown you practically how to create a table. From now onwards I am not going to show you how to create a table, because you already know how to create a table and how to insert the records. Okay, so here in my system I have already created the table source and target tables, and I have already inserted some of the records in the source table. Now by using the Informatica tool, we are going to extract the data from the source, transform and load into the target table. Okay, so here source table, if you observe, there are duplicate records, right? So here in the first row we have 10 Ali 10,000, and second row we have, again here in the fourth row we have 10 Ali 10,000. This is also another duplicate record. These two also duplicate records. Tell me how many duplicate records are there in this table? How many duplicate rows are there in this table?
4.
4, 5.
There are four duplicate records, not 5. Okay, so there are 4 duplicate records.
Ravi also.
Got it? So there are how many?
Ravi also one more duplicate.
Yeah, so whatever here I have highlighted, these are the duplicate records. Whatever here I have highlighted, these are the duplicate records. So if I remove these 4, 5, 6, 7 rows, we will have the distinct records. How many distinct records are there?
3.
So we have 3 distinct records. So 4 duplicates and 3 distinct records are there. Got it? Okay. Now, while loading the data,
my SQL isn't starting. My SQL, my Oracle SQL developer, it's not starting. Like I don't know. It's like it's. I don't know if like should I go to if I go to get started, it's not starting. What should I do?
I will check after today's class.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So here, from now onwards, you have to create the tables, source table, target table, and you have to insert some records in the source table. So in this scenario, what is our requirement is, we have to load the distinct records from source to target. So there are duplicates. Same insert statement you execute multiple times so that the duplicate records will get created. So in this table, there are total 7 rows are there. In this table, there are total 7 rows are there. Out of 7 rows, 4 rows are the duplicates. These 4 are the duplicates, and we have 3 distinct records. Even though there are 7 rows in the source table, I don't want to load the duplicates. I want to load the distinct records from source to target. Okay, so can you tell me the SQL query to select the distinct records from a table? What is the SQL query to select the distinct records? Any idea?
Select distinct star from table name.
Okay, we can write star or you can write column names, employee number, employee name from table name, right? So this is the table. Okay, so all these queries are important. So to select the distinct, I don't want duplicate records. I want to select only distinct records. To select the distinct records, we can execute the query like this. So now you can see we have got distinct records, right? 10, 20, 30. So do we have the duplicate records here? No. So these records I want to load into the target table through Informatica. So in the source table, there are total 7 records. Even though there are 7 records, I don't want to load all the 7 records. I want to load only distinct records. So this is the SQL query. Whatever the query returns, those records I want to load into the target table. For that, I am going to create a mapping now. Instead of selecting all the records, now we are going to select only the distinct records and we are going to load only distinct records to the target. Okay, so we'll see how to create a mapping for that. So first you have to create source table, insert some records in the source table with duplicate records and execute the commit and then create a target table. Okay, and do not insert any records in the target table. Once the source and target tables are ready, then open the Power Center Designer tool, connect to the repository, open the folder, then first go to the source analyzer. This is the first step what we have to do. We have to follow the 6 steps. Okay, so here we have to import the source definition. First step is import source definition. Before importing the source definition, we already have one source definition here under source analyzer. So even though if you keep as it is, no issues, but generally we'll do right click here, clear all. You should not delete, you just have to clear. Even though if you clear this workspace, that source definition will be available under sources folder. Again, if you want this one, you can drag and drop, you will get it. Okay, if you don't want, you just have to clear this one. So before you start creating the new mapping, you just have to clear the workspace and then go to the menu sources, import from database and enter the source table name here, enter the username, password, connect. So again, you no need to create a ODBC data source and all. Okay, so you no need to create this training folder and all. So under the same folder only we will be creating. Okay, so don't create the new folders. So if you want to create a new folder, that I will show you in the future class how to create the new folder. For now you have only one folder. Please create all the mappings under that folder only. And this ODBC data source, again every time we no need to create, only for the first time we have to create. Just here enter the table name, enter the username, password, connect, so that it will display the source table name here. Select and OK, so that the source definition got created. Okay, this is called source definition. Okay, so now we have got the source definition. As soon as we import the source definition, here also we can see. Next, go to the target designer to import the target definition. Here also already we have one target definition. We just have to right click, clear all, clear the workspace. So even though if you don't clear, that is fine, it will work. Okay, so there is no issue, but it is suggestible to clear. Copy the target table name here, then go to the menu targets, import from database and enter the target table name here. Just enter the username, password. So we are going to follow the same 6 steps for every mapping. So it is connected. Now here we can see the target table name. Click on OK. Yeah.
Sir,
So
I
we have got,
used.
what is that?
Sir, is it necessary to in search box we have to uh, enter table name?
It is not mandatory. So here, if you don't enter the table name, so while connecting here, if you don't enter the table name here, and if you connect, it will display so many tables in system schema. We'll have, you can see here, there are so many tables. It would be difficult to search from this list, right?
Okay.
Okay, so that is the reason you have to enter the table name here. If you enter the table name, you will get only that specific table. It would be easy to select that table from here. Otherwise, you have to search here, which is our table, like this.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, yeah. like this, we have to drag and drop the source definition, and then so after importing the source and target definition, here you cannot clear the mapping. You can see clear all is disabled. Only the source and target definition you can clear, but mapping you cannot clear. Okay, so if you start creating the new mapping, to create a new mapping, go to the menu, mappings, create. As soon as you click on create, this workspace will become clear. Okay, now the second mapping, m underscore emp underscore sq s1 t1 load. Okay, so this is our second mapping to load the distinct records, right? So like that, some meaningful name you can give, click on OK, and then so after giving the name to the mapping, we have to drag and drop the source definition. If you have practiced the last class example, then the steps whatever I am doing, it would be easy to understand. So drag and drop the source definition. Along with the source definition, you will get source qualifier transformation also. Here you have got source qualifier transformation, and then drag and drop the target definition. Okay, so after drag and dropping, so select the employee number, drag and drop, right? Instead of drag and dropping one by one, so you can just right click, select all the columns at a time here, place the cursor on employee number, drag and drop on employee number, so that all the links will be connected at once. At a time, everything is going to be connected. Got it? At a time, everything is going to be connected. Okay, so like this. Now here we have created the mapping as same as last class mapping. In the last class, how we have created, in the same way we have created the mapping. So this mapping, it will select how many records from the source, how many records this will be loaded into the target.
Equal number of records that were created in the source to then to the target.
So just tell me the count, how many records this will be selected.
3.
Wrong answer.
Wrong. All the records in the SQL, all the record in the SQL table, M table.
What is that M table?
Emp SQS1 table.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Still, I have not written the distinct, right? So this is the normal which I have created as.
Oh, okay. You still need to create. You still need to create the distinct.
Hold on. Let
Okay.
me come.
Okay.
So this mapping will select all the records from the source.
Okay.
Okay. So because still we have not written a query. So have we written any query here? No, right? So we have created the mapping as last class mapping.
So the mapping will be this the same.
Yes. Okay. So this will select only the records. You know, all the so since inside the source qualifier transformation we have not written a query, it will select all the records, but we don't want to select all the records. We want to select only distinct records. To select the distinct records from the source, right click, edit on source qualifier, go to the properties tab, and first you can see here we have transformation. The second tab we have ports tab. Okay, so you can see here employee number, employee name, salary, these are the column names. But here in Informatica, we have to call these are ports. Informatica transformations. What do we have to call this one? Ports. Okay. I repeat, employee number, employee name, salary are the column names. But here in Informatica, we have to call these are the ports. Okay. Fine. So, and then go to the properties tab. So in the under properties, the first property you have the SQL query. So right side in the value field, click on this down arrow, you will get the SQL editor. So here we can write the SQL query. So if there is no SQL query in source qualifier transformation, it will select all the records from the source. But if you write a query inside the source qualifier, it will select only those specific records. Okay, so this is the query, distinct query. Please be on mute. Okay, so like that we have to write a query. Okay, select a distinct employee number, employee name, salary from the source table. So instead of writing the query here directly, also you can write a query. Okay, but just make sure there are no errors in the query. That's the reason we have to write the query first in SQL developer. The same query you can copy paste here, and then ODBC data source. So here we have to select whatever ODBC data source we have created, because we have to check whether whatever the query we have written, that is valid or not. So for that, enter the ODBC data source, username system, password system, and then validate. You can see no errors detected. Got it? Okay. So I repeat, after writing the query inside the source qualifier transformation, we have to validate the query whether it is right or wrong. For that, we have to select the ODBC data source, username, password, system. You have to select and click on validate and click on OK. Like that, we can write the SQL query inside the source qualifier transformation. That is the reason you should have some basic knowledge of SQL also, writing the SQL queries, because inside the source qualifier we have a property to write the SQL query. So if there is no SQL query inside the source qualifier transformation, it will extract all the records from the source table. If there is a query inside the source qualifier transformation, then whatever the records written by that query, only those records it will be loading into the target table. Got it? So click on apply. Okay. Save. Okay, so for this mapping, now we will create a session task. Before we create a session task, we will go menu mapping edit. We will copy the mapping name from here, because for the session task also we have to give the same name. So open the workflow manager. Go to the task developer, right click, clear all tasks, create session, s underscore this one. So SQ, this is the mapping. Now you can see it is showing two mappings. For which mapping we are creating the session task, that we have to select and click on OK. So that here it will show you, if you double click that session task, it will show you the mapping name for which mapping we have created this session task. And then connections we have to set. Only for the first time we will be giving the connection. So from second time onwards, if you go to the menu mapping connections, so you can see here, you want, you can change, but Oracle also same. So it will take the connections automatically. You no need to change the connections every time. Okay, so like this we can set the connection. You no need to create a connection every time. Only for the first time we will be creating the connection. The same connection we will be selecting here. Okay, so with that the session task also created. Next, workflows, create. So this is the session. Drag and drop tasks, link task, save. Okay, now with this we have done with mapping, session, workflow, everything. Now it is ready to execute. So as soon as I start execute, first integration service, it will check whether it is a mapping valid or not. If mapping connections, everything is valid, it will enable the reader thread. As soon as reader thread is enabled, reader will go and check inside the source qualifier, is there any SQL query written under the properties. If yes, then reader will execute that query first, and whatever the records written by that query, it will load only those records to the target table. But if there is no query inside the source qualifier transformation, reader will extract all the records and it will load all the records to the target. But now in this scenario, we are selecting the distinct records, means unique records from the source table, and we know we want to load only those unique records into the target. So further, just click on start workflow. As soon as I click on start workflow, it will start execute. So you can see here it is running. To see the status, you should not click on WF workflow. Always you have to right click on the session task, get run properties. So if you on workflow, if you right click get run properties, you will not get the source and target statistics and all. So always you have to select the session task, and on session task you have to select the getter and properties option. Now you can see, even though there are total 7 records in the source table, but here reader has read only 3 records because we have a query inside the source qualifier transformation. That query has written only 3 records. That is the reason it has read 3 records, and only those 3 records loaded into the target table. So now in this scenario, so we know source table contains total 7 records, but even though there are 7 records, our query has written only 3 records. Those 3 records only loaded inside the target table. So you can see we have got these 3 records. So do we have the, even though it is not in an order, that is fine. Okay, first we have department employee number 30 and then 1020, right? That is fine, but we have to see here whether we have got the distinct records or not. Do we have the duplicate records here? No, right? We don't have the
No.
duplicate records. Okay, so this is how you have to create a mapping to load the distinct records from source to target table. So if you want to select the distinct records, then you have to load like this. Got it? Okay, not only distinct records. Okay, suppose let's say from the source table. Now another second scenario here in the source qualifier, S2. Okay, so here what I am going to do is S2 T2. Like this, you create another source and target table. This is another example. So after creating the source and target table, in this scenario, what I have to do is I want to load records with salary greater than 10,000. Not only distinct, suppose now I have a requirement like this. I want to load the record select star from source table emp sq underscore s2 where salary greater than 10,000. Like this, if you write a query and if you execute this query, so you can see how many records we are getting: 20,000, 30,000, 30,000. So like that, depends on our requirement, we can write a query. Okay, so in this scenario we want to load only the records where salary greater than 10,000. So for that I am going to create another mapping now. So right click, clear all, same steps we have to follow. Enter the source table here, connect. So like that we have to set the source, otherwise if you don't enter here you will get all the tables. And then this is the target table. Go to the target designer, clear all targets, import from database, enter the target table name, connect. What is the requirement here? We have to load the records where salary greater than 10,000. So m underscore emp underscore sq s2 t2 underscore load. Okay, so this is our requirement. So this is our source definition. Drag and drop the source definition, drag and drop the target definition. So after that, from source qualifier we will select all, drag and drop here, open the source qualifier, go to the properties tab. Here we have to write a query. This query I can copy paste here, just validate so that no errors detected. Okay, it is not mandatory to validate, but make sure if there are no errors, save. So with this we have created the mapping. So from here we can copy the mapping name, task developer, clear all. Here also we can clear the session task. Go to the menu, tasks, create yes underscore mapping name s2t2 load. Click on OK. Done. Session task got created. Go to the workflows, create wf underscore name we have to enter, and then this is our session task. Drag and drop here, task, link task, and then save. With this is ready to execute. As soon as I click on start workflow from the source, even though there are 5 records, our query will return only 3 records, because where salary greater than 10,000 we have only 3 records. Only those records will be loading into the target. So here the source is this one. So in this source table you can see we have total five rows. So out of 5 rows, only we have 3 rows where salary greater than 10,000. Now we have got executed successfully. So you can see we have got only the records where salary greater than 10,000. So like that, to practice this in source qualifier second scenario, you have to create a source table, insert some records like this, where salary greater than 10,000, and then create a target table. Do not insert any records. Follow the same 6 steps here, execute and see whether you have got the records where salary greater than 10,000 or not. This is our second scenario in source qualifier. Next, third scenario. So third scenario, you have to create the same emp sq s3. Okay, so here also you create source table, insert some records like this, including the duplicate records. Okay, and then target table, do not insert any records in the target table T3. Okay, so we don't have any records. You have to follow the same thing, the way how I am giving the namings and all, same way you have to give the names to the tables. So this is the third scenario in the source qualifier. All these things you have to practice. Okay. Now, after creating the source and target table, the requirement here is while loading the data from source to target table, in source there are total 8 rows are there. Right? Now I don't want to load all the 8 rows from source to target table. I want to load only the distinct records. So how many distinct records are there here? How many distinct rows are there?
There's Ali, Ravi, Pavan, Kamal.
No, hold on, wait.
Okay,
I'm just asking the count. How many are there?
8.
4.
Okay, wrong answer. Next. How many distinct rows are there here?
4.
4.
There are 4, right?
4.
4 distinct rows are there. Okay, so we have total 4 distinct rows are there. Okay, so what do we have to do here? While loading the data from source to target, we have to load the distinct records, right? So in the first scenario here, we have written a distinct query. Okay, now this time, without writing the distinct query, how we can load the distinct records? If you go to the source qualifier under properties, so you can see we have a selected distinct checkbox. This is called checkbox. You no need to write a query to select the distinct records. Without writing a query, just by enabling this checkbox, it will also load the distinct records from source to target. That we will see how to do that. So first, this is our source table. Now let's start creating the mapping. Follow the same 6 steps. Clear all sources, import from database, connect. Okay, select the source qualifier table and then here right click, clear all. This is our target table. So we are practicing different properties inside the source qualifier transformation here. Okay, this is the third example, S3 T3 load. Okay, now what we have to do, so select the source qualifier, drag and drop. Not source qualifier, this is source definition. Now in this scenario, what is the requirement? Before you create a mapping, you have to understand the requirement. What is the requirement here? Requirement is to load the distinct records from source to target table. So to load the distinct records from source to target table, this time we are not going to write a query here. We are going to just enable this checkbox. Automatically, it will write a distinct query and it will load only the distinct records from source to target table. Select a distinct, apply, okay, save. Task developer, right click, clear all tasks, create, and like this you have to give the mapping name, create, and S3 T3 load, like this you have to give, click on OK, done. The session task got created, then workflows create. So like that you have to copy paste the mapping name in everywhere. Same mapping name, session name, workflow name should be same. I've already told you in the last class. You should not give the different names. Okay, so mapping name should start with small m underscore, workflow name should start with small wf, session name will start with small s underscore. Then rest of them should be mapping name. Okay, so we have to follow the same 6 steps. Drag and drop this one session task, go to the menu tasks, link task. See, we are not writing a program here. Do we have any coding here? No, this is a tool. Okay, we are just drag and dropping, connecting, setting the properties, selecting the options and all, right? And if you set everything and if you execute, it will out the back automatically it will write the query and it will execute and it will load the data from source to target. Okay, so that's the reason it is very easy to learn. When it will be easy means 100%. If you practice, then only it will be easy. If you don't practice, 100% it would be difficult. Okay, so like that we have to create a mapping session, workflow, everything, and then now start workflow. Now it is starting. Right click, get run properties. So to see the source and target statistics, you can see even though there are total 8 records are there in the source table, right? We have 8 rows are there. Since we have enabled the distinct checkbox, so that has selected only 4 distinct records from the source table and the same 4 distinct records loaded into the target table. So this is a target table query. So you can see we have got the 4 distinct records. Do we have any duplicate records here?
No.
No, we don't.
Right, we don't have the duplicate records. Okay, so we don't have the duplicate records, all are the distinct records. Okay, so this is how we have to load the distinct records. Next, what is the difference when we have to write a distinct query? Okay, so here inside the source qualifier transformation, okay, so what is the difference between writing the distinct query and selecting the distinct checkbox? Okay, when do we have to write selected distinct column names from the table name, right? And when do we have to enable the distinct checkbox?
Because it
Okay,
applies to all the columns and rows.
yes, correct. All the columns. Okay, suppose let's say in a table if there are 100 columns, not the rows. Okay, let's say you have 100 columns in a table. I want to do the distinct on all the 100 columns. If you want to do the distinct on all the 100 columns, then do we have to write a selected distinct query with 100 columns, or do we have to enable this checkbox? Which one is suggestible?
Unable to
Select
checkbox.
distinct.
Okay, I repeat, there are 100 columns in a table, not the rows. 100 columns in a table. Now I want to distinct on all the 100 columns. In that scenario, do we have to select the distinct checkbox, or do we have to write a query inside the source qualifier? What do we have to do?
You mean is only one row or 100 rows?
We don't have to check.
Rows doesn't matter. Forget about rows. I'm talking about only columns. Doesn't matter if you have 0 rows or 1 million rows. Okay, so I want to do the distinct on 100 columns. So we will be doing the distinct on the columns. So in the query, select a distinct here, what we have written. So here in the distinct, what we have written here. So are these column names or the rows? These are what we call this one. These are the column names.
Yes.
Okay, so here I want to do the distinct on all the 100 columns. Then in that case, do we have to write a select a distinct all the 100 column name, or do we have to select the distinct checkbox? So here, if you enable the distinct checkbox, so it will do the distinct on all the 100 columns from a table. If there are 100 columns in a table. Okay, so if you select the distinct checkbox here, it will do the distinct on all the 100 columns. Or if there are 3 columns in a table, if you enable the distinct checkbox, it will do the distinct on all the 3 columns. Okay, fine. Now I don't want to do the distinct on all the 3 columns in this table. I want to do the distinct on only 2 columns. I want to select only 2 columns and I want to do the distinct on these 2 columns. Okay, so whatever the distinct records we are getting based on the employee number and employee name, these 2 columns data only I have to load into the target table. So in this case, do we have to write a distinct query here, or do we have to enable the selected distinct checkbox to do the distinct on the specific columns in a table?
We have to write a SQL query.
Exactly, we have to write a SQL query. Okay, so here we have to write a SQL query. Got it? So here, if you do this, if you select the distinct checkbox, then it will do the distinct on all the columns. Now I don't want to do the distinct on all the columns. I want to do the distinct on the specific columns. If you want to do the distinct on specific columns, then definitely select a distinct and those specific columns only you have to select. You have to write inside the source qualifier transformation under SQL query field. Got it? When do we have to enable the selected distinct checkbox? When do we have to write the distinct query? Any questions here?
No.
Okay. So
So,
like that.
so this thing will only give you the not matching records.
Just now I have shown you multiple terms, right? You didn't see whether we have got the not matching or matching records here. I have executed this query and I have shown you, right?
Yeah.
What we have got? We have got matching records or not matching records?
Not matching records.
Okay, so not matching means unique records. Unique records we will get, distinct means. Okay, fine. So 3 examples or 3 scenarios are done here. Okay, so first one is by writing the query, you load the distinct records from source to target. Second one is you load only the records with salary greater than 10,000. Third one is without writing the query, enable the distinct checkbox where to load the distinct records. Okay, next. Fourth scenario in source qualifier. Right, so open the source qualifier, go to the properties. If you see here, so here we have one property to write the SQL query, right? Here we can write a SQL query. Okay, in the same way we have 2 more properties here. Pre-SQL, here you can, if you click on down arrow, so you have got the editor here, SQL editor. Here also you can write a SQL query. Right, and we have one more property here, post-SQL. Okay, so if you open this one, here also it will allow you to write a SQL query. So that means there are total 3 properties: SQL query, pre-SQL, post-SQL. So there are 3 properties inside the source qualifier transformation to write the SQL queries. Okay, so even though there are 3 properties inside the source qualifier transformation to write the SQL queries, so which query will execute first? Which will execute second? Which will execute third? That we will discuss. This is also one of the important interview question. Tell me what is pre-SQL, post-SQL, when the pre-SQL will execute and when post-SQL query will execute. Okay, so we'll see what is the scenario where this pre-SQL and SQL queries are going to execute. So here I have one scenario to understand that pre-SQL and post-SQL. source qualifier transformation. This is what we discussed in now. First three we have completed. Load distinct records from source to table, load salary greater than some number into the target table, and third one is load distinct records from source to target by using the distinct checkbox. Okay, so these three completed. Now the fourth one. Fourth one, as I told you, we have pre-SQL and post-SQL. SQL query, pre-SQL, post-SQL. Even though we have these three properties inside the source qualifier transformation, the first priority it will give to the pre-SQL. Informatica, the reader, always the first priority it will give it to the reader. Got it? Reader first priority it will give it to the pre-SQL query. So remember, pre-SQL query will execute at the beginning of the execution. As soon as we start execute, first step reader will go and check inside the source qualifier pre-SQL query. Is there any query written inside the pre-SQL? If there is no query, or if there is a query written, first the pre-SQL query will execute. After pre-SQL, the second step it will go to the SQL query. So second step after execution of this pre-SQL query is the pre-SQL. Reader first it will go and check, is there any query written inside the pre-SQL? Do we have any query here? No. If there is no query, then second step it will go to this query, SQL query property. So second priority after pre-SQL. This SQL query will execute only after pre-SQL. Okay, this query result will load into the target table. So whatever the result or records written by the SQL query property, those records it will load into the target table. Okay, so after loading the data into the target table, at the end of the execution, so once the source data loaded successfully into the target table, at the end it will display the succeeded message. So before displays the succeeded message, okay, at the end of the execution, it will execute post SQL query. So post SQL query will execute at the end of the execution, which is after loading the data from source to target. These definitions are important. When pre-SQL will execute, pre-SQL always it will execute, at the beginning of the execution. First the pre-SQL query will execute, and then when SQL query will execute means after immediately after pre-SQL query. Okay, and when post SQL query will execute means at the end of the execution, after loading the data from source to target table, at the end of that execution, post SQL query will execute. So these three you have to remember. And in pre-SQL, we can write DDL, DML, TCL commands. In SQL, if you have gone through my SQL recording, there I explained what are the DDL commands. DDL means data definition language. In data definition language, we have create, alter, drop, truncate. Like this, these SQL queries we can write in pre-SQL. And also DML. DML means data manipulation language. There we have insert, update, and delete. These queries also we can write in pre-SQL. And also TCL. TCL means transaction control language. Means commit. To commit the data in a target table or any other table, we can write a commit also here in pre-SQL. So like that, in pre-SQL as well as in post-SQL also, we can write these queries: create query, alter, drop, truncate, insert, update, delete, commit. All these things we can write in pre-SQL and post-SQL. Whereas in SQL query, you can write only DRL. DRL means data retrieval language. In SQL, we have a data retrieval language, which is a select statement. To retrieve the data from the source, transform and load into the target table, we always write the select statement in SQL query. So remember, in pre-SQL, we cannot write a select query. Even though if you write a select query, it is no use. Select query to load the data from source to target table, always we have to write a select statement in SQL query property. Whereas in pre-SQL, post-SQL, we can write DDL commands, DML commands, TCL commands. These three types of commands we can write in, pre-SQL or post-SQL. Okay. Now there is a scenario here. First, you have to create a source table like this. So our next scenario, fourth example. So you have to create a source table, insert some records like this in the source table, and then target table. Target table also initially you have to insert some records, some dummy records. Dummy records you can insert here in the target table. In this scenario, at the beginning itself, you have to insert some records in the source table, and target table also you insert some records. Okay, so source and target table should have some records. Now the requirement here is there are three requirements. The first requirement is before loading source data into the target table, truncate. What is meant by truncate? Can anyone tell me what truncate will do?
Delete permanently, sir. Delete the records.
Huh?
Delete the rows in table.
Delete the
Wrong
structure
answer.
with the records.
Wrong answer.
It will short.
We cannot recover the table once it truncate and delete the data, and we cannot recover it.
Exactly. Okay, so we cannot recover. Okay, so we have to say truncate is for to delete the table data permanently. You have to say permanently. That is important word. Okay, so if you simply say delete the data, by using delete command also we can delete the data. Right? Delete, what delete will do? Delete from table name, that also will delete.
But
And
it's
what is the difference between
temporary.
Temporary? Delete command will delete the table data temporarily, whereas the truncate command will delete the data permanently. Okay, so the terminology is very important. You have to use proper words. Okay, so delete the data permanently. So from permanently means again we cannot get back, we cannot roll back. Okay, once you delete the data by using the truncate command, you cannot roll back. Okay, so whereas if you use the delete command, okay, then even after execution of delete command, the rows will be deleted, but still by executing the rollback command, we can get back or we can roll back the data. Got it? That is also another important interview question. What is the difference between truncate and delete, or truncate and drop? What is the drop command? What drop command will do?
Drop data will delete
Delete entire row.
the whole table.
The whole table, yeah, the whole table will be dropped.
Okay, so it will delete whole table along with the structure and data, everything will be dropped. So nothing will be there. Okay, but
So
now
no
here in
records to load, no records to load there at all. Sorry, sir. No records to load there at all.
yeah. So truncate drop means everything will be dropped, nothing will be there.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So here we have source and target tables. Already there are some records in the target table also. Now what we have to do before loading the source data into the target table, we have to truncate and load. Truncate and load means we have to delete all the records permanently from the target table. I don't want to have those records, so I want to truncate the target table, and then we have to load the data from source to target. Okay, so to truncate the target table, okay, so in SQL we have a query like this: truncate table. Which table we want to truncate? This table, target table, emp sqt4. So that is the target table which we have to truncate. So truncate means all the records it will delete permanently. So to truncate, before loading the data into the target table, to truncate the target table, tell me we have to write a query in which property? Is it pre-SQL, SQL, or post-SQL? When do we have to execute truncate? At the beginning of the execution or at the end of the execution? When do we have to execute truncate?
Beginning of the execution.
So beginning of the execution. To execute the truncate at the beginning of the execution, where do we have to write a query? In pre-SQL or SQL or post-SQL?
Pre-SQL.
PSQL.
So in pre-SQL we have to write a query. So in pre-SQL, truncate a table name like that. If you execute, as I told you at the beginning of the execution, first step it will truncate the target table. Okay, so what it will do, it will source reader will go and check inside the source qualifier transformation in pre-SQL. Is there any query return? Yes, now we have the truncate table query. So first it will truncate, delete all the records whatever are present in the target table, and after deleting, the second point here, load only distinct from source to target. So here in the source table we have duplicate records also. I don't want to load the duplicate records. I want to load the distinct records. To load the distinct records from source to target table, just now we discussed, we can write a query select a distinct star, or we can have all the column names. Star means all the columns. It will display all the columns from the table. Select a distinct star from source emp underscore s4. So if you write this source table, it will select only the distinct records and it will load distinct records to the target table. After loading the distinct records into the target table, what we have to do is, so this is third point, after load the distinct records from source to target, we have to check in the target table if the salary is less than or equal to 200. So here in the target table, we have to check if the salary is less than or equal to 200. If it is less than or equal to 200, then we have to add 100 to their current salary. Else, we have to leave the same salary as it is. If else logic we have to implement. After loading the data from source to target table, inside the target table, we have to check each and every employee salary. If it is less than or equal to 200, then we have to add 100 to their current salary. Else, we have to leave the same salary as it is. Okay, so else we have to leave the same salary as it is. Got it? Okay, so for that, to update the salary after loading the data into the target table, we have to update the salary if it is less than or equal to 100. For that, since it is the end of the execution, we have to write a query in PostSQL. Update table name, target table we have to update. Set salary is equals to salary plus 100, where salary less than or equal to 200. So this is the update query. Update query is for to update the data in the target table. Now here we have a requirement to update the salary in the target table. If it is less than or equal to 200, then we have to add 100 to their current salary. Got it? So if it is less than or equal to 200, then we have to add 100 to their current salary. This when we have to execute at the end of the execution. Since we have to execute update query to update the data in the target table, so we have to write a query in PostSQL. PostSQL query will execute at the end of the execution. Remember, pre-SQL query will execute at the beginning, PostSQL will execute at the end. End means after loading all the records from source to target table. If everything got succeeded, then at the end of the execution, the PostSQL query will execute. Okay, so this is homework for you. So you create source target table like this. So source table emp sqs4 like this, you give the same table name and insert some records same like this, including with the duplicates. Target table also you create like this with the same column names and insert some records in the target table like this, some dummy, any name, any number, any salary you can give. So someone, let's say by mistakenly they have inserted these records, we don't want to have these records. That's the reason in pre-SQL, let's say we have written the truncated table query to delete all these records, and then from the source we have to select the distinct records. The SQL query will execute, and then after loading the records from source to target table, at the end of the execution it should have to update the salary to 100 if it is less than or equal to 200. Got it? So here we have the salaries are, so you can say 10,000, 20,000 we have. So in this case, here in source qualifier, you have tried, okay, in PostSQL. So update table name set salary equal to salary plus 100, where salary less than or equal to 20,000, like that you can write. If it is less than 20,000, then it should have to add 100 to their current salary. That's it. So you can write these queries in source, create source table, target table, insert some records in the source and target tables, and create a mapping session workflow. Inside the mapping in source qualifier, you write these 3 queries and then execute and see. After execution, you have to observe in the target table whether you have got the, first you have to check whether you have only distinct, first you have to check whether already whatever the records are there in the target table, whether they have deleted or not. Yes, they should have deleted. And then second, you have to check whether only the distinct records loaded into the target table or not. Yes, you have the distinct records. And then next check, okay, whether in the target table while loading the data from source to target, for whichever the record salary is less than or equal to 20,000, for them whether the 100 is added or not. This one you have to observe. So if everything is fine, then yes, so you know how to write a query in pre-SQL, post-SQL and SQL query. So these are the properties which we have in the source qualifier. We have other properties also, user defined join, source filter and sorted input. All these we never use. Okay, so you just concentrate on SQL query, selected distinct, pre-SQL and post-SQL. All the other properties we do not use. We no need to check those things. Okay, so only these properties you can learn. So tracing level is important, that I will explain at the end, because we have that property in all the other transformations also. That's the reason we'll discuss that pre-SQL, post-SQL at the end. Got it? Clear? Okay, so these are the 4 scenarios you have to practice today. Got it? So we will stop here today and then we will continue tomorrow. Tomorrow we will start another new transformation, which is expression transformation. Okay, so today you practice these 4. So I know some of you have not practiced last class scenario also. Last class I asked you to practice total 2 or 3. Those 2 you have to practice and today's 4. Total 6 are there to practice. If you don't practice today also, then tomorrow when I start another transformation, tomorrow I will give 5 scenarios to practice. And these are 6, tomorrow's 5, total 11 will be there, and you will not get time to practice 11 scenarios in a one day and you will get confused. Okay, so if you are attending training for 1 hour, you have to spend minimum 2 hours for practice on same day. So complete these 4 today and then attend tomorrow's class. Fine.
Sir, thank you, sir. Sir, are you going to stay a little bit longer to fix the SQL issue, sir? Like the
Yeah, and wait, yeah, we'll check.
Thank
Okay.
you, sir.
Yeah, so you practice these 4 scenarios and then we'll continue tomorrow.